For those of you who have grown up in this part of Connecticut and traveled in and around the greater Hartford area, you may have had an occasion to listen to WDRC on the radio. For ages, DRC has played oldies music from another generation. Music loved and appreciated by some of you in the congregation this morning, I'm sure. One of the things that the DJs on DRC used to do is take requests. Listeners call in and ask that a favorite song be played. The other day, a friend of mine mentioned to me that he had heard a chapel talk I had put together a few years ago and asked if I would be interested in retelling it again, playing an oldie, if you will. Well, here it goes. A few years ago, I spent some time visiting my sister and her family and friends in Philadelphia. At one point during a spectacular dinner party on New Year's Eve, I was asked what I felt was the key component to a Salisbury School education. It did not take me long to come up with a reply: learning to take risks. I have long felt that one of the things we do really well here is actually encouraging our students that it's not only okay for them to take risks, but it is essential for their development as confident, competent young men. I am reminded of a quote from Salisbury School alumnus Josiah Bunting from the class of 1957, who wrote the following when he was the president of Hampton-Sydney University. He wrote, "The fundamental purpose of a liberal education, a liberal arts education, is to predispose the student for the rest of his life to greet that which is new to him with curiosity and fascination, rather than fear and contempt." Well, in order for a student here to feel confident or curious or fascinated enough to take a scholastic risk by signing up for a challenging course or delving into an unfamiliar or unpopular topic, to face an artistic risk by auditioning for a role in a school play or a position in the gospel choir, or undertaking an additional offer over in the art department, or to tackle a social risk by befriending a fellow student who is having a difficult or an awkward time adjusting to life here, or taking an athletic risk by trying a new, unfamiliar sport rather than staying with one that is safe and comfortable. In order for any of these risky behaviors, if you will, to happen, a student has to feel confident because his foundation, his grounding, his background is solid enough. He must feel confident and prepared enough to know that he has a chance to succeed. Not a guarantee for success, but a chance to achieve triumphantly. Taking a risk with only a slight flicker of hope is a shaky gamble. But taking a risk with some real confidence and preparation is something else altogether. Perhaps if I were to relate to you a story from my own experience about a risk I had taken, I'll make my point. My paternal grandmother, Catherine Urquhart, was the captain of the 1919 University of Minnesota women's hockey team. According to her stories, that year her team beat the men's team. She's pretty sure that that had something to do with the fact that most of the men's team had been decimated by the Great War. Later on, when she got married, she had 4 children. She taught all the kids to skate and play hockey on a rink they would flood in their yard on South DuPont Avenue near Lake Harriet. She hung up her skates in 1940 when she was nudged into the boards and broke her ankle. My aunt used to tell me that my father was the culprit, but he'd never admit it. Later on, when I was a kid growing up in Minnesota, my father taught us all to skate on the streams and ponds and lakes around our house. I can distinctly remember skating on Minnehaha Creek, or on the pond behind Luke Stemmer's house in Deep Haven, or on Lake Minnetonka or Lake of the Isles. As the winter would approach, back in the day when cold was cold, Woods, none of this global warming stuff, we would wait anxiously for the ice to freeze in November so we could go skating. Looking forward to winter is just one of the characteristics that people from Minnesota get set apart from the rest of you. I cannot recall a Thanksgiving when we were not skating outside in Minnesota. When I first came to boarding school in Connecticut, I played on the last hockey team that played on a pond rink. The next year, the school built the rink they used until it was replaced last year. Skating on natural ice is something I've done and loved for a long time. As some of you know, the best natural ice, of course, is black ice. Black ice is actually not black at all. It is really perfectly clear because the water in the lake bottom beneath it, that clear ice is black. It makes it look black. Whenever I can find a sheet of black ice, which does not happen very often anymore, I'll take the afternoon and skate and skate and skate until my face and feet are frozen and my legs feel like lead. One of the most memorable Christmas Eves was spent skating on the black ice covering South Pond up on the top of Mount Ragged, right up there. We hiked up from the bottom and arrived around 11 in the morning, put on our skates, bundled up, and spent the day all over the lake. It was cold, and later on the wind kicked up, so much so that by the time we were ready to get home, we were at the far end of the lake, and we were able to glide all the way back down to the dam with the wind at our backs. The hike down to the cars seemed neither as long nor as arduous as the slog up. It was a spectacular Christmas Eve. But what, you may ask, does skating on black ice have to do with taking risks? You'll see in a few minutes. A number of years ago, I was driving through Lakeville and just passed St. Mary's Catholic Church on my right. You may know that part of Route 41 I'm talking about because if you look off to your left, you can see Lakeville Lake through the trees. It was cold, about 15 degrees, the sun was out, and the surface of the lake was as smooth and as still as you could imagine. I knew we might have a chance to skate up there because it had been cold, really cold, for a few days, and we had yet to have any snow. I zoomed home and grabbed my skates, a stick, a handful of pucks, a pair of leather mittens, and my twins, Tom and Catherine, who were in the 9th grade at the time. Let's go, you guys. There's black ice in Lakeville, and it looks as if people are out there skating. Come on. 15 minutes later, we had laced up our skates and were gliding onto the most pristinely perfect sheet of black ice I had ever seen. That afternoon, the surface of the lake looked like a mirror. It was so smooth, there were barely any blade marks where we were skating at the time, no pressure ridges. There was not a whisper of wind. So when we stopped in the middle, you could hear people laughing way over by the boathouse at Hotchkiss to the south. And you could hear other people talking by a bonfire on the shore over to the west. And we could hear a dog barking by the cars parked at the Grove. It was so still and so smooth that when you missed a pass, the puck seemed to glide forever. A student of Mr. Ayers would liken this phenomenon to removing the coefficient of friction. The rest of us would have to settle for a missed pass that went on and on. If you've never skated on a frozen pond or a lake or a stream, if you've never skated on black ice, if you've only skated in a rink, then you've probably never had the opportunity to skate for much more than 200 feet in a straight line. That day on the black ice over in Lakeville, we felt like we could skate forever. And we did, or so it seemed. We must have arrived, I don't know, a little before noon, so by 4, as the sun was setting, we found ourselves on the far side, as far away from our car as we could get. We were tired, but that good tired, that good exhaustion, if you know what I mean. Tom and Catherine decided to race back across the lake. I chose to follow them. And off we went. Long strides and long glides, and across the lake we were headed. The twins were about 10 yards in front of me, and we were halfway across the lake when I turned to look over my shoulder to catch the sun beginning to dip behind that line of trees on the western ridge. When I turned my head around and looked forward again, only Tom was in front of me. Catherine had disappeared. The next bit of time is a blur to me. I'm not sure if what took place next happened over a period of seconds or a period of minutes. The only thing I'm sure of is that it did not take a long time, and you'll know why in a minute. Catherine's head bobbed to the surface. She had fallen through a patch of ice that was obviously much thinner than the rest, so thin it couldn't hold her weight. A few feet away, Tom stood safely, and I was a few feet behind him. There we were out in the middle of the lake, with one of us in the icy water, the temperatures in the teens, the sun going down, and no one but Tom and me within a couple of 100 yards. The next part of the story is almost surreal. Even this morning, as I recount it for you, I find it hard to believe that it really happened. I sent Tom to grab his friend Zach Warner and his father. They had been over by the bonfire. I turned to Catherine. We connected right away, eye to eye. I urged her to reach out to me with her stick as I spread out on the ice by the edge and reached to her with mine. Her hand was just beyond the tip of my blade, and I couldn't quite reach the tip of her stick. I scooted forward a bit more, and the ice beneath, already awash with water, began to tip. I knew for certain I was going in, that I would have to get her out, so I crept ahead a little more, hoping she could reach the stick. 2 more tries. I could feel the water on my chest and stomach and thighs, and strangely enough, I don't remember being cold. All that time, I kept looking right at Catherine, and she back at me. She was calm. She wasn't crying, not panicking, just trying to pull herself up and out of the water. But the ice kept breaking beneath her, and she kept sliding back into the water. Finally, just as she grabbed the blade of my stick, I grabbed hers, and I pulled her out of the water and onto the solid ice. Gotta get up, Catherine. We gotta move. Can't stand here and get any colder. Any colder than this, Dad? Let's go, I said, and turned to whistle for Tom, who had only gotten about 50 yards away, which tells me that Catherine really wasn't in the water for that long, although it sure seemed like it. As I said, the whole thing was almost dreamlike, that it was unreal. I whistled for Tom. Go for the car, I yelled. Catherine and I skated for the shore. We were wet, and our clothes had started to freeze and stiffen. Her sweatpants and bulky wool sweater were soaked, heavy, wet. My cards and windbreaker were starting to thicken up as well. I knew we had to keep moving, had to get off that ice and out of the cold. Who knows how long it took to get to the shore by the grove where the car was parked. When we did arrive, I bent over Catherine's skates and cut through the frozen laces. There was no way I was going to be able to untie them at the time. I cut through mine as well, grabbed her, and hustled to the car. Somehow, Tom had beaten us to the shore, had torn off his skates, and had the car doors open. We got home, and inside, and out of the wet clothes, and toweled off, and into warm clothes. And that was that. I wanted to get them skating again on black ice the next day, so they wouldn't be afraid of ice. It's like that old saying about getting back up on the horse after you've fallen off. That night, though, it snowed hard. So hard that the next morning there were 2 feet of snow on the ground, and the black ice was done for the winter. No more pond skating. She never said so, but I'm pretty sure Mrs. Simmons thought it was okay that we weren't out in the ponds again that year. So, what's the connection? What does this story have anything to do with what I was talking about at the beginning? Pretty simple. I took a risk of skating on the black ice with my kids because I felt I was prepared. I know I have to be ready for anything when I'm out there. I know the rule of 3 when you're on the ice. When someone gets in trouble, one person goes for help, the third person stays with the person in trouble. I know I have to have a hockey stick, or a pole, or a ladder, or a rope handy in case I have to reach somebody in the water. I know about lying down and spreading out my weight so it will be distributed more evenly on the thin ice. I know I have to stay calm and under control in an emergency situation, but I was able to be that way because I knew what to do, and because I had been in similar situations before, and because I had the confidence in myself and in Catherine and in Tom that it would be all right. I know that having a knife in your pocket is a good thing to do. I want to be able to explore and be curious and be fascinated with the new and the different. I want to feel all right about taking a risk, but doing so with the confidence and the knowledge that I'm prepared. And I want all of you to feel all right about that too. Thank you.